your recent Reagan video was just super strong, and I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on that. One, I'd love to hear your specific process of how you put together, how you gather these clips and how you put them in this montage. And then I'd also love to hear, about that specific message and why it spoke to you. For specifically, just obviously it, but for the listeners, it's talking about that we got into this situation, in part because of big government, not thanks to big government in a way. So relying on yourself and your own kind of personal ambitions, and it's to our point, you can have a big impact on your community and the world around you with your actions, and rather than relying on some like external force that's really not, I mean, not to get too political, but the government at its core isn't really creating too much, in my opinion. We might have to cut this out so we don't get canceled.
Yeah. Well, Reagan says, I guess the biggest takeaway from that speech, it's from his inauguration speech. And he says that we often look for government to provide solutions, but government really is the problem to the situation that we're in. And for me, it was kind of interesting for two reasons. That speech was spoken in 1981, which was also the same year that I was born. Mm. And what he was saying, I felt like really said a lot about what the things are that we're going through today, in our society and in this country, really, and globally. And I just felt like there was a need to turn that into something that's, that was visually compelling. A lot of times, you ask me like, what's my process with like creating these videos? I never go out and actively search for something to turn into a video. A lot of times what happens is it presents itself, and I'm inspired by what the person is saying. And I'm like, man, I've got to take this to the next level and put some visuals. So that's kind of always been my criteria. I never really like I said, I never really actively go out and search for something.
Sure.
And then as far as like finding the visuals, a lot of my videos, I try to find like metaphors. And I mean, there's a whole process, right? It's like finding the right music, right? Like this is the very high level things, like finding the right music that matches the tone to what the person is saying and how they're speaking. And then finding the visuals that connect to what the person is saying. And for example, like my Joe Rogan Freedom video, right. He says, people aren't paying attention to certain things. And like, I found a quick clip where there was a guy texting behind while he was driving. And it's like, everybody understands. Yeah. So it's like, it's this quick clip. And I like to add those, like those little things. And you just mentioned, you saw the Jordan Peterson thing. He says that, you could put yourself in a whole, I forget the exact words that he says, but you could put yourself in a predicament. And the visual that I chose to use for that was, you saw the scene starts off with like a snake, and then a mouse gets thrown into the into the snake's tank. And right. It's like, you could really fuck yourself, right? And that, like, right. If you see that and you hear what Jordan Peterson is saying, like, you immediately get it. So that's kind of my process. Like, I always try to find things that connect, not just like, in a cliche way, but also has a meaning within the visual itself.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, you definitely do an amazing job of that. It's certainly compelling, engaging, but also accessible, which I really like. So it's not overwhelmingly, it's not, a lot of them aren't overwhelmingly long. They're, able to be, get the point across, get the messaging pretty quickly, which for my generation, obviously we have like kind of, shorter attention span. I think overwhelmingly, like, people are starting to have shorter attention spans, but specifically like the younger generation. So I certainly felt that connection pretty quickly. And your point about adding in, it's like those little subtle nods and references that really bring the whole thing together, because it's clear when I'm watching them that every single clip is intentionally placed, because they're actually, because it's a shorter video, there's really no time for fluff, which makes it such a hard hitting video. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like a song that's just like every line is a punchline. That's what it felt like to me when I'm watching. I'm like, whoo, I need to watch it again, because I need to, like, I definitely missed some of this because I was just like caught up on the last line. It's like just all, there's like a, I don't know if you know the band Sum 41, but it's like all killer, no filler is the name of their album. That's what I was thinking when I was watching. I'm like, boom, like hits, hits, hits. So I
Yeah,
really like it.
that's the idea, man. Like, and I appreciate you, noticing, picking up on those things. You're right. There's no time for fluff. And I always, you know, well, I guess there's two things I wanted to say. Is my style very much mimics like what a movie trailer is like, right?
Mhm.
I've always been growing up. I always was fascinated with like, with movies, like, as far back as I can remember. I remember, my parents, like, which is kind of crazy thinking back, like, they had the Terminator, the first one, on like VHS, and I remember watching it probably like a million times. And and I just always was like part of like, as I got older and I would be able to go to like the movie theaters, on my own. I remember like my favorite part was always like, going to see the trailers of the next movies that are coming out. And like,
Mhm.
so I kind of, fell in love with that. And then when I started creating videos, slowly but surely, I started like mimicking that style, not intentionally, but like anybody that's seen my stuff, it's very movie trailer-ish. So
Interesting. Yeah, and it definitely has your own, you definitely have created your own style as well. Like certainly, I know what you're saying with the movie trailer type of vibe, but I think that there's like more depth. Maybe it's because of the messaging that you're choosing or the types of things that you're talking about, and just the attention to detail. But it's, you've certainly developed your own style. So I applaud you for that. I always like
oh,
when
thanks.
people have like a specific um, aesthetic, but then make each video personalized off of that aesthetic. So, great job on that.